Hey everybody, welcome to my composition video. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump right in because I didn't film enough of me doing nothing to not jump in. So first things first, you figure out your quote. Mine is, if you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be truth. And that's a Sherlock Holmes quote. I start by writing it out in a real messy, maybe this is kind of how I want my layout to be. Don't worry about getting everything centered just yet. All you're worried about now is just playing around with the words. Depending on your quote, you might want some words to be more emphasized than others. In this case, you can see I'm kind of playing around with eliminate or impossible and eventually improbable being my main focus words here. Now, there's no pressure to get this stage of your layout right. You're using your super cheap material to just play around. And the more you do this, I think the better you get at actually laying things out. Just mess around with it. Again, don't worry about it being perfect the first time. You're really just laying down your ideas. Now, something that helps me, and you're gonna see what I do, this is the weird thing I do, I'm gonna go over parts of this lighter layout with a darker color. I took a drawing class once that taught me about gesture lines. What gesture lines do, they kind of guide you in your drawing. They're like the sketchy part of the drawing that you don't that you end up erasing when you're done. And the whole point of them, they're there to show you where your real shapes are gonna go, where your dark lines are gonna end up being. So they're kind of like practice, kind of like I know that my professor at the time, she said that they were like an insurance policy, a way to make sure that you got the basic shapes right. So I kind of look at my yellow layer like a gesture line. It's there to kind of guide me in where I'm going to put the darker color. Now you can see I went over the yellow. It's a little bit more centered, but I'm still not thrilled about the layout necessarily. So I go back down in the corner with the yellow and kind of mix the words up a little bit. I didn't want as long a shape, as like oval like a shape, and I condensed the words a little bit and left some room at the bottom for, eventually that's where I'm going to put Sherlock Holmes, so everybody knows it's a Sherlock Holmes quote. This time I'm going over my print with a script style, because that's going to be what I end up using. I'm going to do brush lettering eventually. So this helps me kind of get ready for where like the flourishes might go, how the letters all how the letters are all going to kind of play around with each other. But you'll see that a little bit more as I get further into the composition. You can see now I'm actually starting to add weight to the letters. Thin up strokes, thick down strokes. I'm going over in my darkest color. Hopefully you can see that I'm not just going directly over the color before. I am making changes. You can especially see it in the word however, where I'm trying to move the letter towards the center, or the word towards the center. So obviously I am moving to pencil. Now this is still a piece of printer paper and just a cheap mechanical pencil. Nothing super fancy, but I'm trying to draw out what size-wise this is going to look like. So this one is going to be a more to scale layout. It's not all small. And you can still see, I mean, I didn't use like, I'm not using rulers or anything. This is not centered. This is still really imperfect. I'm just trying to get the layout to be cohesive. I'm going to worry more about spacing and making sure that things are properly centered on the page once I'm on my marker paper using my Tombows. But for now, I'm just using my cheap stuff and not worrying too much about it. Trying to make all the words kind of, what's the word? I don't know what the word is, guys. If you couldn't tell, I'm like recovering from some kind of weird cold and I'm not firing on all cylinders. So thanks for being patient with me during this process. But I said I was gonna get this video out either yesterday or today, and so help me, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Okay, so whatever seems to kind of be the main focal point of my piece. It wasn't done purposefully, but I think it kind of makes sense with the quote. If you're gonna put something as the big word in there, whatever remains, meaning like it could be the craziest thing, doesn't matter. If it remains, it's the truth. Okay, pencil sketching. It's a pencil sketch, Sherlock Holmes. Now, you can also see that I've already started playing around with the flourishes. This is a really good time in the pencil sketching phase to do this because it's really easy to correct it if it looks like hot trash, basically. And you don't want to force your flourishes because it'll look too busy. I'm guilty of doing that. Everybody's guilty of doing that. Like, oh, I'm gonna use this flourish here because flourishes are bomb. I'm gonna do it. But you don't always have to. Sometimes simpler is better. But you can kind of play around with it. And a good idea is if you're playing around with flourishes and you're not sure if you're being a little extra with them, just step away from the piece for a hot second and then go back and look at it. And if you find that it's difficult to read, that's probably not a very good sign. If you see that it's taking your flourishes or your extra stuff, taking away from the overall piece, like it's distracting in some kind of way, then also not a very good sign. You want your flourishes and your extra bits to be part of the piece, not just a distraction. Because no one wants to be distracted when they're trying to read a piece. It's already busy enough. Sherlock Holmes. Add my commas. Okay. Now it's about to get crazy. Oh, look. It's a piece of marker paper, y'all. It's getting real now. Yep. Okay, so I'm taking my marker paper, putting it over composition. I'm going to try to be a little bit more aware of my margins and whatnot. And I'm going to take a Tombow color that I don't use often. So this is not my final yet. This is pre-final first brush lettering rough draft. And I'm going over pretty much exactly where the blue marker / pencil layer paper was, with like slight changes. I'm using my Canson XL marker paper, which you can see is very, very sheer, which I love. It's so much easier to do a composition this way because it takes the guesswork out. If I have my regular old marker paper, it's just easier than using my Bristol paper, which is a lot thicker. So now I'm going to do kind of the same thing I did on the first piece of paper. I'm going over that lightest Tombow color with a slightly darker shade. And I'm only changing things that aren't quite working. So you can see here, Remains is not, I'm not liking the way that that's turning out. And the reason is everything else on the paper is kind of not slanted, and Remains I was like desperately trying to italicize, like, and I didn't even realize it until right then. So that's gonna help it look like not garbage. And I centered it a little bit better. So that's what you want to do when you're in this phase. Oh, change my podcast. Last podcast on the left, everybody. I was listening to Biggie, Tupac conspiracies because I like conspiracy podcasts. But anyway, all of this going over lighter shades over and over again with, darker shades. It's all to make sure that you can make these little changes. You want to be looking out for things that you can fix. So, Remains, however improbable, must be truth. And this top part, if you eliminate the impossible whatever, they are not lined up with each other. The part in brown is off center to the right side of the page a little bit, so I will be correcting that in the final, and that's kind of why I made them the two different colors here, just to make a differentiation between the two, and to remind me when I am tracing the final on another piece of marker paper to move this stuff. Okay, whoa, the scene changed. Okay, so now I have my final sheet of marker paper. I'm going to tape it down. I'm using my Tombow N95 for my gray base. And I'm going over what I did on the last piece of paper with this marker that I will eventually be blending on top of. Again, I can make small changes when I'm going over. You can see I'm scooting the word impossible in just a little bit because I thought it was hanging off the edge a little bit too far. And I'll be going over that brown section from the last sheet of paper. Just moving things a little bit. You can see the dot of the eye on the sheet underneath this one is a lot farther in than the one that I just did. So the point of doing all of this tracing over lighter colors with darker colors and using a few sheets of paper, it's to make these little corrections. And maybe this is too tedious a process for you, but this works for me, and I like the way that a lot of my compositions come out. I mean, I know it's janky to do it this way, but I mean, it works. So yeah, I hope that you guys got something out of this. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.